There you are.
Yes, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, doing well, very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, thank you a lot for this chance to do this interview. I just recently came across some of your stuff, and uh, I really enjoy it. I think we do have some differences of opinion, very, very minor. But I think your criticisms of, socialism and communism is spot on when it comes to cybernetics. And yeah, thank you for this invitation to have this
No,
conversation.
I'm the one that has to appreciate you calling me, and I hope I am worth your time. And I'm very transparent, so we're recording this. I have nothing to hide. I'm not ashamed of anything I say. I like, as an attorney, I like discussions. I like arguments. I like to listen to people, and unless I find somebody that is absolutely closed, I will keep trying to, you know, prove my points. And then I will listen to arguments and I can change their mind, of course.
Fair
But
enough.
I'm glad you like this subject because right now, even me as a Mexican, I'm very concerned of what's going on in the United States and also in Mexico. We have governments that are leaning towards socialism. And all I've studied about cybernetics tells me that it doesn't work, and it tells me why it doesn't work. Okay. So I'm here to answer all your questions. And as I said, I hope I'm worth your time. So if, if you have anything to ask, go ahead, or you want to make a comment or whatever, you tell me.
Yeah, so I guess first of all, I think just about everyone I know that either watches my stuff, which is very few, and yours, I think there seems to be a large agreement that socialism doesn't work when we look at the foundations of cybernetics. So, what do you think is the most powerful criticism of socialism from cybernetics? So, just like the pure, most basic point, what is the major failure?
The pure, most basic point is that socialism does not have requisite variety. Okay. It establishes a system that tries to regulate society, but society has much more variety than the socialist system, which is handled from the top down. All viable organizations in nature are organized from the bottom up, and this is what the viable system tells you. And you have to work through the personal autonomies and then build upwards towards society, not from the top downwards.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the term requisite variety? Probably,
Uh,
maybe yes.
uh, I mean, I think the term itself kind of makes sense. There needs to be a large enough division of things, whether it's choices, individuals, stratification. Uh,
Variety is a term to that equals complexity. So what the law of requisite variety called Ashby's law tells you is that the number of states of the system demands a similar number of states in the regulator if you're going to have some sort of control. A regulator that does not have requisite variety to match every possible state of the system will eventually get out of control. Okay, it's a very perhaps tautological definition in the sense that variety absorbs variety, but Ashby was really talking about the variety of the system has to be absorbed by the variety of the regulator. So one of them is perturbance variety and the other one is control variety. but they converge on the term variety, meaning the different number of states of a system. Let's say a light switch has two states, on and off. Let me just say that as an example. So there is no in between on and off. It's on or off, okay? Now, if you go to a street light, it gets a little more complicated. If you get to the possible images in a computer, it gets really, really astronomical, okay? So in order to control, you need the regulator to match the variety, okay? Now, what socialism always tries to do is that they try to cancel the variety of the social system, okay? And in capitalism, which is not perfect, capitalism tries to match variety by giving you a whole assortment of products and services. And socialism says, no, 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 no. You can only have one type of shoes. You can only have one type of car. You can only, because by reducing the variety of the system, then they think they can control the system, okay? And it leads to a centralized government, to a centralized planning, and your choices, which is your variety, gets reduced to almost nothing. If you look at the variety of the Cuban people, of the Venezuelan people, of the Nicaraguan people, of the North Korean people, their variety is almost zero, okay? And if you look at the variety of an American, I always have this example handy. My wife can go buy something at Target. If she doesn't like it, she can return it, no questions asked. That is a lot of variety that a system can handle, okay?
Okay, that makes sense. I actually have an analogy for that as well, in the banking system. So, in the realm of like the Basel work and stuff like that, there's been a large push to reduce banking, from a large number of banking firms to include like the investment side and the shadow banking, and trying to centralize that into like the fortress banks and stuff like that. And that's something I've always pointed people towards, is the idea is that a lot of the regulations that are happening in bankings, they're trying to make the banking sector smaller and smaller and smaller, because they think that instead of regulating 10,000 banks, it's much easier to regulate 4 very large banks. But what that's eventually caused is this feedback mechanism where these large banks are able to take more and more risk, because they know that they don't have to face competition from the
They're too big to
ecological
fail.
sense. Yeah, right. Exactly. That's the fundamental problem. There's a great discussion that's going on right now. Is what is more important in the banking sector? Is it the influence of competition into the banking sector? Does that cause more stability, or do we need more regulation? And how do we kind of make a more viable system out of these? And that's actually one of the things that I was watching one of your videos on Stout. I think that's her name, Dr. Lynn Stout. Make sure that that's right. Who wrote on how to make capitalism better by having more equality involved in
The lady
capitalism.
attorney, right? The lady attorney.
Yes.
She died of
Yeah.
cancer, you know. Are you
I
aware?
I am not aware of that.
Yeah, she's a very
Rest her
valuable
soul.
person, and she died. I was following her, and I stopped following her for a little while, and then when I came back and I looked her up, she had died from cancer, which is very sad. She was very
That is,
smart. There are some
yeah.
things I didn't agree with her, but one of the first videos I ever made was about cybernetics and the financial crisis of 2008. And what motivated me to do that video was the fact that I was hearing the newscasters, the media talk about feedback and positive and negative feedback in absolutely the wrong terms. Okay. So my comment is this. In the usual parlance, when you say positive, I got positive feedback, that means that somebody praised you. Okay. Somebody said you're doing something really good. And you get negative feedback when you have something bad. And actually, positive, negative doesn't have to do anything with good or bad. It has to do positive, that is fed forward mechanism that grows continuously. Okay. The more input, more output, the more output, the more input. It's a vicious circle or positive feedback circle, and the system keeps growing. Let's say you step on the accelerator of your car, you produce a fed forward positive feedback system. Okay. And if you don't release the accelerator and brake, you're gonna crash. Okay. Sooner or later, you're gonna crash. You're gonna run out of gas if you're running some remote highway. Okay. And negative means that you take a difference between the goal and the outcome, and you feed that information back to control the system, the input, so that the goal remains closer and closer and closer. Okay. So negative and positive does not mean what it usually means in ordinary language. It has a technical meaning. So here I am watching these commentators on TV saying, oh, there's positive feedback because, you know, this is going on with the banks. No, positive feedback is the fact that if you were a bank and you had all your competition selling the swaps and the credit default swaps, you had no choice. Either you join them and compete with them for selling more and more credit default swaps, or you were out of business. So the problem was with the rules of the banks. Okay, the regulation by Clinton, which created the opportunity for all these strange banking instruments. Okay, so you're obviously interested in this banking thing. The other thing that I can tell you about banking is that if you look at the function of banks in society, they are clearly what Stafford Beard called a system to system in the Bible system. Banks are intermediaries between people saving and people investing, okay? And the banks are just in between, trying to match the savings with the investment they make, the savings people make and the loans they make, okay? But then banks have all this information and they can't help themselves. So they use this privileged information about what's going on with the savings and the loans, that then the banks acquire a different function. They become more like a government. They choose who to lend, who not to lend, and then they start acquiring a regulatory function, which is implicit in the things they do. And you cannot regulate an economy only by coordination. You need some sort of authority, because coordination usually runs into trouble. If you and I are exchanging goods, let's say you produce apples and I produce oranges, we can create a very spontaneous, coordinated system where I share part of my oranges and you share part of your apples, and we both eat better. Okay. And that is how the economic system started. I have a book called The Cybernetic State. I don't know if you've seen it, or did you know about it by accident or something, but I explain how the nation state is built from the bottom up according to the model and in theory, and this in practice is exactly what happened. But now we have the political system, which is full of loopholes and money intervening. We know, like in the campaigns, you had Mark Zuckerberg's intervention in the last election, and they made a mess of it. Okay, I might as well tell you that I became an expert in electoral fraud in the 80s because Mexico was really doing badly because of the fraud. So I dedicated many of my adult years to follow electoral fraud, to study electoral fraud, and I even have a video where I compare the 1980 Mexican election to the 2020 American election, okay? And the similarities are astounding, but I won't talk about that. That's something I can refer you to. You can watch it. It's in YouTube. And again, maybe I have gone off course because of your original question, but I just want to give you a overview of the things I've been doing with the cybernetics. You know, it's very useful. It's an enormous tool, and it's being used in many areas, and now we need to use it to redesign the cybernetic state.
Yeah, no, I really like the tangents. I mean, I think that's kind of the foundation of having some of these good conversations. If you just stay on one task or one idea, nothing really gets said because most of what you can say can happen pretty quickly. So a little bit about myself. Most of my work has actually been in corruption and social stratification. So I've spent 2 years working in anti-corruption policy, as well as trying to get into some think tanks and stuff like that to work on the social
corruption
stratification
is my
side.
thing. Also, I can see the coincidence. Corruption is something that really interests me a lot. And when I invited Stafford Beer to Mexico in 1983, he left several months, almost a year later, frustrated with Mexican corruption. Okay, we were invited to go around the Mexican government, and we had access to anything we wanted, but then the government wouldn't do anything with what we discovered. And he wrote a piece for the paper, a memorandum to the president, which was later translated. He gave an interview, and he said that the Mexican political system was designed to produce corruption. Okay, so corruption can be an output of a system, of a political system. Okay, and part of the corruption was the elections. So that's an important part of my life, is fighting against corruption and fighting against electoral fraud.
Yeah, absolutely. I had actually been working on kind of giving a cybernetic treatment on, corruption, right? So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Nicholas Luhmann.
Yes.
Okay.
I've tried to read his books. They're very complicated, and I don't like complicated. Really, we don't. Maybe you'll criticize what I'm going to say, but we are so far away in things that we could do right now that I probably don't see any real benefit of trying to understand everything Luhmann is saying, okay? If you understand him, congratulations. I stick to Stafford's ideas, which he took from Wiener, from McCulloch, who was his tutor, from Ashby, who was his compadre, and Ashby, McCulloch, Turing, you know, the big cyberneticians, okay? And he produced the VSM. Now, the VSM maps perfectly against the nation state. If you take the US Constitution, if you take the Mexican Constitution, all the constitutions that model after the United States, and even some unwritten constitutions like those of England, you can map the VSM against them, okay? But most notably, the United States Constitution. What went wrong? I can tell you, the political system has gone wrong. The viable system, in my cybernetics state book, I explain when you use the viable system, then you realize that the animal you're looking at is the nation state, okay? The nation state is, let's say, like an animal. And if you look at the rule making, you study law. If you look at the decision making, you're into political science. And if you're looking to exchanges, you're looking to economics. So through cybernetics management, you get 3 for the price of 1, okay? You can study the economic system, the legal system, and the political system all come together as different, let's say, overlappings of each type of system, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I got into Nicholas Luhmann through Talcott Parsons, so I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
Yeah, I was just researching for a video I was making for a friend that I'm trying to sell him some consultants, and I was explaining that Talcott Parsons was the guy who attended the Macy meetings, and he applied the cybernetics to the social system and produced the book that's called The Social System, where the main ideas are the interactions. And I know Luhmann goes that way. And let me tell you what I don't like about Luhmann and the sociology aspect, okay? When people talk about society, okay, you are never going to have any sort of semblance of requisite variety because society can be many things at the same time, okay? I would rather stick to organized society, which is the nation state. Then you have some constraints, then you have structure, then you can say this is the United States, these are individual states, there's our counties, these are cities, these are neighborhoods, and each one of them is viable to a certain extent and autonomous to a certain extent within their domain, okay? So I don't like to talk about sociology or social systems like Luhmann because it's too broad. What exactly are you going to talk about? I criticized a fellow from MIT. I might remember his name, but right now he wrote about social, what do you call it? About the social system. I said, it's the cybernetics. It's not only social. So he called it social physics. Okay, using iPhones to measure how people move on a weekend and that sort of thing. Okay, and he called it social physics. I wrote to him and said, "Sir, you are really talking about social cybernetics. Physics is something else. Physics has nothing to do with cybernetics. Cybernetics is a different domain, okay?" And he wrote to me with a very smart answer. He said, well, I don't talk about cybernetics because cybernetics is everywhere. It's like air. It's everywhere. I said, well, he's a very smart guy. but he's missing the point. We cannot afford, okay, to keep hiding cybernetics from people, okay? I don't, you haven't, did you tell me your name? Or you rather
Uh,
not?
yeah, I just typically go by the Economancer. I run some I run a conservative YouTube. And what I mean by that is
You don't have to tell me your name. I can call you
yeah,
Economancer. It's okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yes.
No problem. No problem. I
So
use my name all over the place. I don't care if people, I'm the most public private person ever, you know.
yeah, no, I totally get it. I totally get it. And eventually I plan on doing that. But as it stands right now, I'm in some very muddy water within my social system. So it's not a big deal.
No, no
But
problem. No problem. So how can I
the
call you? What should I refer to you as? What?
the Economancer, that's typically
So when I say,
um
hey, Economancer, this and this, okay?
okay.
Fine.
Uh, So the main reason why I bring up Lumen and Parsons is because, again, my academic background is actually economics. I've done a lot in economics. I jumped over to sociology. That was really my first passion, but sociology at the undergrad level and stuff like that, it's not worth looking into. And because I spent most of my life looking at corruption, I guess my adult life looking at corruption, whether it's foreign corruption practices and stuff like that, because I was in the military as well. So I've seen a lot of that. So working against that, corruption's been a big part of my life. And then social stratification. I grew up extremely poor in America. And when I was younger, I was a communist. I was like a devout communist because I didn't know any better, right? So I had no clue what the real world was like. I just knew from where I come from, and then I would go to school, and I went to a very wealthy school. It didn't make any sense to me. I had no clue why this was happening. There was like hierarchies that I didn't understand with other students. And it took me a long time to grow out of this. And so the
Well,
main
let me
thing,
say congratulations,
oh,
Economancer.
thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations.
It's
My
been a
my my
fun life.
oldest brother was also very socialist inclined all during his law school years, and then he went to work for a big Mexican corporation, and he learned about the virtues of capitalism, like the hard way, doing business, and now he's more capitalist than I am. I I don't consider myself a socialist, and I don't consider myself a capitalist either. I am Birian, okay? I'm a cybernetician, and cybernetics does not accept this two, a world split into two, okay? There are times where a nation state or an economy, if you want to call it, has to centralize, okay? Because of an emergency. We just saw it with the COVID crisis, okay? And they didn't do it very well. But anyway, they got together and they came out with the vaccines and everything. And there are times when you can be more decentralized. The human body works both ways. We are decentralized most of the time, and we are centralized for the job at hand, like right now, talking to you, okay? But if a fire starts going on, I'll centralize even further and get rid of the fire or run out of the room or anything, okay?
Yeah.
So as a cybernetician, I can see the virtues of capitalism and the the idealistic notions of socialism, which I truly uh, can understand, and I I like that. But one thing is the idealism, and another thing are the hard facts. Now, if you want me to sacrifice my liberty so that you can tell me what I have to do, why should you do that and not me? Okay. So democracy is let's organize a level playing field, and then we'll get together and work things out. Now, the political system and the electoral system is in real trouble, okay? I was a very determining factor in creating the electoral laws in Mexico, okay? I played a really big role. I'm not trying to be cocky or anything. I'm just telling you as a fact, okay? You can read about this. There are signs all over the place of what I did in papers and everything, in newspapers. And we studied electoral fraud in many ways. And I went all over the country studying elections, and I became a really good expert. Okay, I was labeled as the #1 corrupt electoral corrupt practices enemy. You know, I was the enemy of the corrupt electoral corruption, #1 enemy. What it didn't help me, because then that stopped me from coming into office, because people were sort of afraid of me that I would continue to create more revolutions of that sort, you know. But anyway, I'm not complaining. So I know a lot about electoral fraud. I know a lot about corruption. I helped organize a municipality where I lived in the 70s. I was very young. I was 30. And we probably had the first corruption-free municipality in Mexico, okay? And we were totally transparent. We set up a computerized system, and we published every check we produced in the administration. Every check there for everybody to look at. Well, I can tell you that even now we don't get that, okay? We don't have access to every single check. We don't. And I suppose in the United States the same thing happens, okay?
Yeah,
You don't get
absolutely.
access to everything, and you should, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Transparent. If you want to beat corruption,
Well,
transparency
you
is the
know,
way to do it.
let me make a link here, okay? Probably so that we get this very clear. Talking about requisite variety, if you don't have transparency, there is no way that the people can match the variety of a government that's doing things behind closed doors, okay? There is no way. They will outsmart you, they will outrun you, they will outbid you, they will outplay you and everything, okay? So transparency is the only way that the people can really get hold of the government, okay? Rules have to be clear and they have to be simple, okay? In Mexico, we have rules on how to elect people to office that are very complicated. We don't choose our representatives directly. Some get chosen directly, and some get chosen through some stupid lists made by the parties, and those guys to get into Congress without having to run an election, okay? And that is a very stupid way to run an election, okay? So that's just an example.
Absolutely. So the last question, and I think this is probably the most pressing question. So obviously, you and I have this shared interest in corruption. In the political system, right? So the political system is a very big issue. All right. So here's the question. We have two of these major issues going on in the West. And I use that broadly. Some will say the global North, global South. I'm actually going to pull, I don't know that much about Mexico, but I have heard musings of political correctness. So you have the political system, and then you have political correctness. This critical theory that's influencing the cultures and society at large, and then you have the political system. Which do you think right now and into the future poses a bigger problem for the stability and the viability of nation states such as the United States, Mexico, and even Europe?
Well, maybe you'll say I'm very radical, but political correctness, we don't even have the term in Mexico, okay? Because we're white, we're black, we're brown, we're whatever. We call each other fatsos, slim guys, or whatever, and nobody takes offense, okay? So political correctness is not. But when you get to critical race theory and that sort of stuff, that is the most dangerous thing you can be doing, because you are fooling around with the identity of your nation, okay, of the people, okay? If you are not following the identity of the Constitution of the United States, which is the most wonderful constitution ever designed by man, then you can blow up the system. If you blow up the identity of the people, okay, and they are not identified with their constitutional system, you are going to blow up the system. Now, let me make a point here. This conversation is, because this is free, it's 40 minutes. I don't know what's going to happen in 40 minutes when the 40 minutes are up, but we can continue and start another one right after this one. If they cut us off or something, we can just go on, okay, in another conversation. I don't know if you are aware of how Zoom works and everything. I'm not very familiar.
Me neither.
So I know I'm using this for free and I get 40 minutes. If they cut us off, I would ring you again and send you another invitation. We can continue with a second recording. Is that okay?
That sounds fine to me.
Or do you think we're through here? It's like we have like 3 more minutes.
I mean, to me, I think this is an important conversation. This matters. I mean, I am
all the time in the world.
Okay. I am technically at work, but I have a little bit more. So absolutely, I have till 1 o'clock that I can take my free time. I'm on lunch right now. So, but yeah. So do you actually want to just cut it here and then try to start up a new one? I can actually send you one, or
send me one. Send me one. And
okay.
You want to make a comment for what I said about critical race theory and all those things, knocking down the monuments, criticizing the founding fathers who devised this thing almost 240 years ago, and now they're giving you the richest country on earth, and now you're complaining because your great grandfather was a slave. You're not a slave anymore. Anybody can do whatever they want. All you need is to work and you'll do fine, okay? If you want the government to pay for your lunch, I don't believe in free lunches, okay? And
yeah, absolutely.
I started doing this also, and I don't believe in that, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my big thing right now is absolutely. I think that critical race theory, the critical theories themselves, whether it's critical pedagogy, post-colonialism, and all of those things, all of these different ways of looking at the problems in society and saying that they're just maximally bad and all of this. I think this is ultimately the biggest problem. Like you said, one, we have to have some type of shared identity for society to work.
Identity is the central cohesion factor in a viable system, the identity, okay? Just as you cannot live with certain DNA in your body, okay? You cannot live with those ideas at the same time and have a constitutional system. And then you have people feel justified. All this that happened was a justification for the electoral fraud, okay? That's the way I see it. You said, oh, people are grieving. We should look, poor people, these poor guys. And now you steal the election because you're helping those poor guys. You're not helping them. You are doing them a disservice, okay? And we can talk about that all you want. I get really passionate about elections and corruption in elections.
I am going to send you a meeting ID in just a second. I got to figure, I'll just do this. I'm going to send it to you in that same email. Oh, I gotta exit out of this one. I'm gonna end this one and send you that in just a second.
Okay, fine. I'll be here.